People don't realize that the foods that they consume have a temperature, and they influence the internal temperature of their organs. So if you're constantly consuming foods that are cold, it's going to lower your metabolic capacity. And it's going to bring you more into a state of lethargy and fatigue and tiredness, difficulty concentrating, and all sorts of deficiency type of conditions and diseases. Garlic is actually it's very warming in the body, and it also has anti-inflammatory and antibiotic properties. Ideally, what you're trying to aim towards is your overall consumption of foods to be neutral.
People love the sauna. They love the cold plunge. They love the heat. They love the cold. What if food temperature could have a huge impact on people's lives and they didn't even know it?
Exactly. And that's where we are, Nick. People don't realize that the foods that they consume have a temperature, and they influence the internal temperature of their organs, of their system. So your metabolic activity, as far as what I mean by is the way your cells function, your ability to lose weight, your ability to gain muscle, your ability to work out and to exercise and to function and to think clearly, all of that comes down to how well balanced from a heat signature or a thermal signature temperature-wise your food is. So if you're constantly consuming foods that are cold, it's going to lower your metabolic capacity. And it's going to bring you more into a state of lethargy and fatigue and tiredness, difficulty concentrating, and all sorts of deficiency type of conditions and diseases.
You're Dr. Ron Dummar. Community Health and Wellness is your clinic. You have a lot of specialties. One of them, Chinese medicine. I think food temperature, it's not just like, is it cold in the fridge? Did you heat it up on the stove? No, each food has its own temperature.
Right.
We can talk about that. But your background in Chinese medicine and what you do here kind of influences this whole conversation. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about how you got here and then why you think people should care about this.
Oh, for sure. Like, my background is in Chinese medicine. I'm a chiropractic physician as well, and I studied them at the same time. So Western medicine and Eastern medicine simultaneously. And for me, it was always like how I was beating my head against the wall sometimes trying to figure out how we were describing the same body with such different words.
Like the Western medicine model versus Eastern.
Yeah, right. And then all of a sudden it started to click with me that certain descriptions or certain terms of, smooth flow of nutritive fluids actually meant blood mover, which meant blood thinner, right? You're like, if it's going to thin the blood, it's going to move the nutritive fluids through the vessels much easier. And so I started making all these connections as well. And then I realized part of the idea of Chinese medicine is balance and looking at the ecology or the ecosystem around you, nature, as a symbol, essentially, a metaphor for our own bodies. So we have to look at the world around us and we go, okay, there is a cycle. We go through seasons. There's hot, there's cold. And what does the world do? If it's overgrown in something, some other thing will come out and try to tamp it down, right? So it's never in a state of, and the world is impressive this way, but if we have too much, you could say wood or tree or foliage that's just building up in an area, eventually that area will have a fire, right? And it will dissolve it and get rid of it. Okay. So the world is always reaching for balance, always trying to push towards balance.
And it's always
we're the same way,
even at a microscopic level or slowly or quickly. And so is our bodies. I think we like to think of like, Dr. Dummar, you're the same guy today as you were yesterday. But always physiologically, isn't it always kind of moving? And so the idea of, okay, we have the parasites and we have the viruses, but how can we keep that all in balance in this ever-moving, flowing body of ours, I think is really fascinating.
Yeah, and even with labs, like we look at labs kind of as a finite, fixed, here's your explanation, this is your diagnosis, here's your label, good for you, right? Well, but the reality is you are constantly in a state of flux. And a lab value is one singular point in time from an infinite number of points that could have been chosen. You chose one, right? And then you're trying to determine your entire health status based on this one. So obviously we'd say based on that, multiple points in time then are going to give us a better reading of what your actual physiology is, whether you're more of a heat or a hot type of individual or more of a cold or cool type of individual as well. If those are the conditions that you tend to go towards, like do I tend to be deficient in issues or do I have deficiencies in general, like vitamins, mineral, nutrients, or am I more towards heat in inflammatory and infection states in my body? And some people literally do. They're like, oh, I tend to get hot really easy. I tend to get infections really easy. And we need to cool that system down a little bit. And other people are like, oh my gosh, I'm always so tight and stiff and sore. It's hard for me to get out of bed. I feel fatigued. I can't wake up early. I'm a very just hard to get going in the morning person. So that type of person, someone we actually need to warm up. We need to bring that thermal temperature or that heat signature within their body, their organ systems up, and give them some metabolic might and capacity so that their body can perform the necessary functions metabolically that it needs to. We can do that with food. The cool thing is, again, we just use the external environment. We use the environment around us as a metaphor or an analogy for the way we treat or should analyze our own bodies. So now we look at our organ systems and we can say, okay, well, am I leaning more towards cold or am I leaning more towards hot? Okay. And then we look at plants. Is this plant more of a cold plant or is it more of a hot plant? So sometimes the environment that a plant is in and the way that it has learned to thrive or subsist determines whether it's a cold or a hot plant. So for instance, I'm going to give you one plant.
Yeah, because I think we should talk about food here. Like which foods for what? People don't know what they are. Are they hot? Are they cold? Should I have them? Should I not? Is this one causing that?
So we're going to start first of all with some very common things that people use, and just to help you relate to this concept, right? Because on some level, you already do it. You just don't realize you're doing it. Okay. So what's one of the first things? I have a sunburn. What's one of the first things I reach for?
Aloe vera.
Aloe vera. Aloe vera is a very cold plant. Okay. You want to put it on a burn because you want to take that temperature down. Okay. So you're using thermogenics. That's what you're doing. You're using that very principle of thermal or heat signature to take a cold substance to bring a hot substance down, right? Or to bring the temperature of your skin down. So aloe vera you can actually ingest as well. So you can take it internally if you have a lot of inflammation internally or inflammatory conditions within the stomach, the GI. So it's interesting, the environment. What environment does aloe vera typically grow in?
Hot climate?
It's usually in a hot climate. So think about this, like aloe vera has learned how to thrive and survive within a very dry and a very hot climate. Okay, which means it's resisted that heat. So it has the constitutional ability, the intelligence within it. It was just super amazing. The farther we dig into aloe vera, the more we learn about its constitutionally cold characteristics and compounds that can bring hot conditions down, provide anti-inflammation in the body. Okay, so that's a super cool thing, but it's part of the nature of aloe vera. It's part of the nature of the plant because of how it was grown, where it tends to subsist or grow. Okay, so let's talk about, I guess, another plant, shall we? This one is, let's say, onions. When would you typically use onions? Or garlic? Garlic's probably a better
saute
example.
Something?
Yeah, you just saute it. You often will use onions or garlic. You'll often use it in food, right? But it generally adds like a spicier or more like a hotter flavor to whatever you're preparing. Okay, so garlic is actually it's very warming in the body. And it also has anti-inflammatory and antibiotic properties in it. One of the substances within garlic is called allicin. Okay. So here's an interesting thing. When I look at a patient and I see, let's say that they have an earache. Okay. They have pain in their ear. And this is a very common thing that I see parents do, and they don't understand what's happening, but they'll use garlic oil. Okay, it's a strong antibiotic. It has allicin in there, but you have inflammation in the ear. It's literally red, right, with inflammation. Inflammation is heat, and you're adding heat to heat. And so for parents, oftentimes when they add that, they're like, I don't understand. I've been putting garlic oil in it. It's just not getting better. I don't understand what's happening. Well, that's because we actually need to use a cooling. We can still use some anti-inflammatory antibiotic nature plant or oil, but it needs to be on the cooling side to be more effective, way more effective in that case. Okay. So some of your hot foods, garlic, scallions, chili peppers, things like that. Okay. Now, what do we do, or how does that influence our internal environment? If I'm consuming hot food all the time, okay, then really what's going to happen is I'm going to be more prone to inflammatory conditions.
What's a hot food? We've talked about garlic and onions. Give me some more examples.
Okay. So kale is actually on the warmer side. It's not hot. Lamb, goat, and trout, believe it or not. High stream trout, and usually the water in high mountain streams is very, very cold, and so the trout has to stay very warm. So it's more of a warming hot food. So lamb and goat are actually hot meat substances. Okay, let's look at other things that are hot as far as spices. Obviously, cayenne is very hot. Black pepper, mustard, horseradish, cinnamon bark. So a lot of people are using cinnamon now as a means to address their diabetes, right, or blood sugar. And they're like, if I just take this cinnamon, it's going to be beneficial because that's what it was said on on a podcast or somewhere else. But if they're in a heat type condition, thermogenically within their body, and they consume garlic, or if they consume cinnamon, it's not going to be as effective as if they did something like berberine, which is a very cool anti-inflammatory plant.
How do I know what's going on with my body? I don't know if I'm hot or cold.
That's great. So temperature wise, if you tend to lean more towards heat, in your body, or when you sleep at night, do you sleep with the covers on or off, or is it easy for you to even wear like a sweatshirt or a hoodie or something to bed? That'll give you an idea of, am I the first person in the room to put a sweater on if the AC comes on? Look at things like that. Do I tend to be more of a warm person or a cool person? Also looking at your facial characteristics, like do I generally tend to have heat or redness around my cheeks, in my face, in my scalp? Do I have any sort of inflammatory conditions like rashes? Am I prone to rashes? That is going to be more of a heat type of individual where you're expressing, there's inflammation, a hot environment inside, and we need to cool that down. Okay. So then if you start consuming more cooling foods just in your diet, you can start your medicine at home. Right? You can start saying, okay, I want to eat or consume cooling foods because I see heat signatures around my body. I see rashes, right? Or I feel like it's easy for me to sweat repeatedly, constantly. My pores can open very, very easy and I can sweat. And I tend to be somebody who doesn't need to put on a sweatshirt or doesn't need to even have any blankets or covers, hardly, maybe just a sheet at night to sleep.
That's so interesting. So to think, how do I typically respond to a warm climate or a cold one, or when someone cranks the AC, am I the first one to complain about it if they're the ones who like it really cold? Yeah, I think I'm probably someone who runs a little colder. So now I'm interested in, would I want more warming foods?
Yeah, generally you would want more warming foods. And this is a balance, because ideally what you're trying to aim towards is your overall consumption of foods to be neutral.
Okay.
Right? Now, then the caveat there is, if you live in like our environment that we live in our latitude, we have really cold days. We have winter, right? And then we have summer. So there's quite a differentiation in seasons where it gets quite hot in the summer and it's very, very cold in the winter. So, I mean, it gets right now, what is it? It's much warmer now than it has been in the past winters, but it gets down to 20 degrees, 15 degrees even. And in the morning, there's frost on the windows. So in that environment, you may want to be doing more warming foods during that time period for yourself, just to keep you more thermogenically or more heat in the body so your metabolic capacity stays up. Okay.
So people are going to be like, this sounds all kind of woo-woo to me. Like woo-woo as in like, tell me the proof. Like this sounds like a lot of like, oh, well, I believe the metaphor of nature is the thing that's happening in the body. And Chinese medicine calls this a warm food and this a cold food. Like garlic is hot and asparagus is cold and warm is kale and Swiss chard and lettuce is cool. Like I'm looking at the list here. What's the proof? Tell me how this actually works.
Well, yeah. So we actually know in science that there's something called the burn rate. So it's at what point a substance burns. Okay. So if a substance burns at a really high temperature, that means it's actually very, very cold substance. Okay. Or what that means is we're a combustion engine. That's what we do. We actually chemically break things down. We burn things. That's what we do in our stomach. Okay. So if I introduce a substance into my body, how much heat is it going to exhaust from my own body in order to break that substance down? Okay. So that's where we are. We're talking about burn temperatures, right? At what point, at what temperature does this burn? So now if I consume something that has a really high burn temperature, that means it's going to consume a lot more of my own metabolic heat, my metabolic capacity. It's going to take a lot more enzymes to break it down. It's going to take a lot more of my own production. My pancreas is going to be working, right? The cells within my stomach are going to be working to secrete more enzymes. So I'm overworking at some point if I'm consuming these really, really cold substances. And the same goes for the flip side. If something burns at a really low temperature, well, that means it's actually a very warm substance. It like if you strip, now think about what we commonly eat in our SAD, standard American diet. If you strip nutrients, if you strip minerals and vitamins out of a food, okay, and then you just have this substance that you now call some product, okay, and it has all of these minerals. And how hard do you think it is to burn a mineral, like a piece of rock?
Hard.
It's pretty. It takes a high temperature, so it's a very cold substance, right? So that those nutrients, those minerals, would actually give that food substance a different temperature, a different thermal signature within your body. But now you've stripped them all out, but you still have all of the other compounds of that food product. So now you've taken that temperature at which it requires to burn and go way lower. So it's a much hotter food, more inflammatory in the body. So when I consume that food now, the burn temperature is way lower. So I'm going to have a tendency to just like start a fire, you could say, almost like pouring gasoline into the body. And so that's why within our culture as well, we have so many chronic diseases, so many inflammatory diseases. In fact, because of our inflammatory diet, there have been many, many researchers that have suggested that our modern disease is actually inflammation. And where does that inflammation come from? Why have we developed into this state where our modern disease is really just inflammation? The reason we've developed that is because we've stripped all of the cooling, anti-inflammatory things that would fight inflammation out of our food supply. We've stripped it out. We've pulled it out. And now, hopefully, with RFK Jr. and some of the work that they're doing at the HHS, we'll be able to have better quality choices and food throughout all of our institutions.
How do I implement any of this in my life?
That's a great question. So what I typically do is I say to people, the best thing to do is and you can text us or say, hey, give me a copy of the cold to hot food chart. This is something that is, like you said, a work in progress too. The science is still unfolding as well, and we're learning more things about different foods all the time. So if it updates, and as it updates, I can send out new stuff. I don't don't sell this. This is stuff that I've gathered over time and put together and accumulated myself, and I'm happy to share it with you. So yeah, if you want to message me and say, hey, send me the cold to hot food chart, I'll send it over to you. And what I do is I put it up in my pantry area, or put it up on the fridge so that I can look at it. And then I look at my meal. I prepare a meal, and then I look at that hot to cold food chart. And I go, okay, here's the substance of my meal. Where would I rate this from a temperature standpoint? So now I look at that and I say, okay, let's look at, I have a tomato soup. My wife makes a homemade tomato soup. It's amazing, okay? But we put garlic, we put onions, and it's tomato, right? So tomato, garlic, onions, you're blending it up. It's hot. You're eating it hot as well. So you're kind of raising, as you increase the thermogenics, the heat signature by putting heat into it and processing it that way, you raise the thermogenics a little bit more. So that's actually a pretty warm soup, tomato soup with garlic, with onions. That's a pretty hot thing to consume. So what might you want to consume with that? So if you're going to consume something hot, well, then look for something cold. So maybe as a dessert, you could have fruit. So you could have banana even. Like banana is a really good cold fruit, but it's also fairly acidic, and sometimes like acidity, and the tomato is also fairly acidic as well, right? So it's like, what else could we go for? Well, we could try mango, rhubarb. Rhubarb would be really good, or watermelon. Remember, watermelon's super, super cooling as well, and it could be a really good dessert to bring that thermal nature of that meal to neutral.
At first, I was like, this is too much, but I like the idea of putting this on your fridge and then attempting to land in the neutral zone.
That's right.
Or if it's cold out, there's a common sense element to this too. It's cold out, I want hot soup.
There you go.
So can I just have hot stuff when it's cold?
Well, yeah, you can definitely do that, but also you have to pay attention to the type of person that you are as well. So constitutionally, we all kind of lean towards a certain, like we may lean hot or we may lean cold, right? Some people literally, if you take your temperature, and I say this to people too, just start taking your temperature as well. Take it multiple times a day and just get an idea for that. And then start saying, okay, well, here's my temperature. This is where I am, a little bit warm, a little bit cold, a little bit warm. And then start varying up your diet based on that, okay? That's one thing that you can do, is you can check your actual temperature on a more regular basis to see where you are.
Okay, and what about coffee, like hot coffee? I always wondered, people want their iced coffee in the summer and they want their hot coffee in the winter, or they at least drink hot coffee most of the time, and then in the summer, I'm going to get iced coffee. Does one cool the body more than the other? Is coffee on the scale of hot or cold?
Coffee is warming. It's a warming food. And so it is definitely something that you can consume in colder months. And if you drink it cold, like iced coffee, which you can consume, then obviously it's going to decrease the temperature a little bit, right? So you could get to something more like neutral, consuming coffee. The issue, I would say, with a lot of the drinks, coffee, and things that people are consuming is that the added sugars, the added cream, all of those things are actually going to increase the thermogenics, increase the heat signature of it. So it's going to make it more inflammatory. So if you're having black coffee, right? And I don't know, I'm not a coffee drinker, so I don't know how, like, is black iced coffee a thing?
Yeah, it's a thing.
Okay, so yeah, if you do black iced coffee, then that's probably a pretty good choice.
Wow. So some of this is a little common sense. There's an intuitive nature to this, and then some of it is like, I need to look at the list to realize that pineapple is a neutral food.
Yes.
Or pork is neutral, and lobster is cold, and beef is warm, and lamb is hot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and you look at some of the research that we've done over the years too, and we've really targeted a lot of our research on beef, right? We've said arachidonic acid, it's inflammatory, this is the problem, it's causing cardiovascular disease. And you look at it and you go, well, actually, like lamb and goat are more heat generating than beef are. Okay, so if you can source beef really well, okay, and then what do you consume, or what do you consume beef with? If you're consuming it with some sort of potato even, which is neutral, well, that might make it a little cooler. Or you consume it with celery or lettuce. You have a salad with your beef. Like how common is it to have a salad or to have some sort of vegetable with your beef? Generally, people don't just eat beef alone. Now, we do have this whole phenomena of consuming only meat, like carnivore, right? That's maybe a discussion for an entirely different day, but that would be solidly warm to hot. And if you're in you're a cold type person and with deficiency type conditions, and you go to a carnivore diet for a period of time, you will notice a significant benefit from it. Significant benefit until it pushes your body over the edge to more inflammation and more inflammatory.
Eggs are neutral.
Yes.
I wondered about that.
Yep.
Eggs are neutral. What about bell peppers?
Bell peppers tend to be more warm. And then you have things like there are more of your spicy peppers, like your jalapenos. Obviously, those are hot. I think we mentioned horseradish and mustard itself. And when we're talking about mustard, we're not necessarily talking about that the condiment that has turmeric in it for the yellowing, and we're really talking about mustard, right? So if you get a good quality spicy mustard, it's going to be hot.
Olive oil, honey, those are neutral. Fascinating. And then a lot of these nuts are warm, like peanuts and walnuts and
walnuts. Walnuts. I really like walnuts a lot. They are on the warming side. I think they're a quality nut to consume in general, and they don't. I think maybe it's flavor. Maybe people have a harder time consuming it because it has a kind of a more of a pungent, back of the tongue type of flavor. It doesn't really. I haven't ever seen walnuts get like on a craze. A fad craze, right? Almonds are on the fad craze. We've seen all of these other nuts. They get on these fad crazes, but you don't really see walnuts ever doing that. And it's a really great brain food. It's great fats in it as well. And it's warming. Okay. So the point of today's episode is to help everyone to understand as well, the fluctuations that we go through. Sometimes our joints are achy and stiff and sore. And sometimes we're like, what's happening in my body? I don't know exactly. But one thing that you can do to try to help create balance in your life and in your body is to pay attention to the foods that you're consuming, because it's possible you're consuming way hot or warm foods, or you're consuming more exclusively cold and cool and foods, right? Especially sometimes we think, salad is a healthy food. I just need to eat salad and I'm going to get rid of all these other things and it's going to heal me. And we end up really deficient, really defeated, really, fatigued and lethargic. And we're like, what's happening? I should be doing great because I'm only eating salad. Okay. Well, that's one of the reasons I think in our culture that soup is often consumed with salad. Soup and salad is a very common thing because the soup generally would be the warming aspect of that meal, and it would help to provide the metabolic capacity to break down a lot of those cold foods and minerals that are going to be found in the salad and the substances of the salad that you consume.
What a different way to think about food that I've never really considered before.
Yeah.
If folks are wanting like a customized approach, like they're having these issues, they want your opinion on how to set out a plan. How can they reach out and get a consult, whether they're in Utah or anywhere around the world? Well,
yeah, reach out to me. I would say the easiest way to get a hold of us is to text us, honestly. Send us a message directly to our phone system, 435-657-3696. You can also reach out to us at our website, which is chwheber.com. You can find us there also, but I'd love to and be happy to sit down and talk to you more about thermogenics, more about heat signature of food, and how that could possibly be affecting your specific ailments or conditions.
And if they want a copy of this food list as well, we'll send it to you link for sure in the description to Community Health and Wellness in Heber City, Utah. another episode of the Be Well Now podcast.
Be well now, everyone.
Yeah, be well now.
Namaste.
Namaste.